All right, so we've got our pickups into our game, and now we want to actually pick them up. So what we need to do here is basically add a little bit of script to our player. So we're going to get our player to, detect when it collides with one of these pickups, and then, eventually we'll get it to score, and we'll probably do that here as well. So we're almost there, really. We've got the basics of the game here. So let's go check out our script again, and we're going to go to our player script. So I'm going to open that up, and we're going to leave everything as it is for the moment. But we're going to come down. I'll just move this up. We don't need that much extra space there. And we're going to create a new function. Well, we're going to use a function that's already there. And so, or sort of a built-in function. So there's the start one, like I said, that gets called automatically when the game starts. There's a fixed update that gets called every roughly 20 times per second. And then there is, what we're going to use here is called on trigger enter. And so any of these that are pre-made, you can basically find them and everything will sort of work out. Now what we want to do is we want to detect the collision. And so the idea is this is on the player. The other here that's sort of indicated, so when you hit something, it is the other. So what we want to do is detect whether that other is a pickup rather than say a wall or whatever. Now we'll come back to the word trigger in a minute, okay? Let's just put some code in and then discuss what's going on. So we're going to put an if statement in here. So we're going to say if, and just like sort of Python there, if that other dot game object dot compare tag, and in here we're going to put the word pickup. I'll just do it like that. Okay, and let me just finish up this code here first, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do. So notice here we've got this if. The condition has to be in these parentheses, okay? So, and then whatever happens if this is true needs to go into these curly braces. So what I'm going to say is that we want, oh, it didn't indent there. There we go. We're going to other, so again, the thing that we've run into, other dot game object, and there's a little thing called set active, and we'll talk about that in a second. And we're going to set active to be false, so just like it suggested there. Okay, so let's save that, and then we'll sort of talk about it in the context of the game. So when we're talking about sort of triggers, and so what I like to think of those as is a little bit like a sensor. So just like with, say, a door or something like that, an automatic door, you walk into the sensor and something happens. That sensor is acting like a trigger. So same idea here. When the objects collide, so when the meshes collide, or specifically the colliders collide, so we have on the ball, we talked a little bit about that, there is a sphere collider. If I got rid of the mesh collider, you can see that even though that we can't see it, there is this sort of, envelope, I guess, around it, this sphere around the sphere that detects collision. Same thing with these guys here. If you click on this, there is a mesh, and then there is a box collider. So just because of the shape, but it does the same thing, that defines when collisions occur. So it's not really the mesh that's colliding, it is the box collider. Because you could actually turn off. So for example, if I turn off the mesh or the sphere collider on this guy, and I press play, what do you think is going to happen? It's not colliding with anything, so yeah, it falls through the ground, right? There's no longer a collider on it, okay? So we just want to make sure that's on. Now, in terms of this, now we could use on collision enter. And if we did, what would happen is the ball would sort of hit it, and then it would sort of bounce off of it, and then it would be, then we could make it disappear. However, we want more sort of the Mario coin kind of idea, where you pick it up, but it doesn't sort of stop our player. We just sort of move our way through it. So it will just sort of pick up, without, without any incident sort of thing, right? Just sort of smoothly pick it up. So that is why we're using a trigger. So once it detects that collision, it doesn't actually collide per se. It just sort of runs the code that goes along with it. And so you'll notice here in the collider, so on this box collider, we could do is trigger. Okay, whoops, get the right one, and turn that on. Now, that's fine. I could go around and I could turn all of these guys on. It would take a while. Easiest thing to do would be to go back and change the prefab, okay, and do that. Now, there is a little trick. If you do make a change, there's something here called overrides. And so if you come down into the overrides, you can see, well, because I was turning things on or off, that's why. But change to the box color. So you could apply all, and what will happen is that all of them will now have that is trigger, including the prefab. Okay, so the prefab has been set to is trigger. Now, it won't work, but let me just show you the difference. Is when I go through it now, it actually just passes through it. And so you might say, well, oh, there's no collider. Well, no, it's acting as a trigger, right? That's the thing. So it's acting as a trigger. The reason why it's not disappearing is because of this idea of the compare tag. We can put tags on something. So instead of checking to see if it's named, because maybe the names are different, okay, we're sort of just going to check to see if it has this tag pickup on it. So this makes it it's quite useful. And so what I'm going to do is look here again. Maybe this is in the prefab. So let's do it to the prefab here. It says tag untagged. Well, we want to set that tag. And so if I click on here, there's some that are preset. We can add tag. And so what we'll do is it says tag list is empty, new tag, and we just have to be very careful that we spell it and make the capitalization as it is, hit save, and now we have that tag 0 is pickup. The only bad thing is we have to sort of go back. I always do this and then forget it's still untagged. We only added the tag to the list, but as you can see down at the bottom, we can select now pickup. All right, so that added to the prefab. That means all of these should have the tag pickup. Good. As long as I spelled it correctly, we should be good. So if I look here, pickup, I think so, I think we're good. Now what it's going to do is set active to false. So let's just see that happen, and I'll explain. So we've got this. It should work on any of them. So pick your favorite one. And it disappeared. Okay? And then you can see it disappeared. So all of these, I won't do them all, but they should all be pick-upable, if that's a word. Now what I'm going to do is just pause it here. Now it's a little hard to see because of the red, but these guys are now sort of grayed out, okay? And the two that I haven't touched are that. Why? Because their set active button has been set to false. So when something's active in your scene, it has this little checkbox right beside the name. And so that's saying, hey, it's active. And then this indicates it's not active, okay? And I could manually bring it back if I wanted, okay? But it's off otherwise. So yeah, so that's sort of what we've done. We've created basically a tag that allows us to identify these objects. And that prevents, right, for the walls from disappearing. So if I made them tags and I gave them the same tag, triggers, and gave them the same tag, they would do the same thing. Now, just before we leave this one, we'll do one other little thing, and that is add a score. Well, we'll add the variable for the score. So we want to sort of, remember back to the quiz game, right? If you got the question right, we increase the score by 1. We want to do the same thing here. So I'm going to scroll up to the top, and again, just for the purposes of making this easier, we're going to make this public. This time I'm going to use an int because our score isn't going to have decimal values, and I'm going to call it score. And I'm going to leave it blank for the moment. And then down here, I'm going to set in the start, I'm going to set, just like it suggested, score is equal to 0. And so that means anytime I start the game, the score is definitely going to be 0. What makes sense? Well, every time I pick up one of these objects, I add 1 to the score. So in this, right, we're going to set that object to false, but what I also want to do is increase the score. Now, its suggestion is good. Score plus plus, that's a typical way to increment it by 1. If you wanted to do more, you could do plus equals, say, 10, whoops, and give you 10 points per score. Okay, so that would work too. I'm going to just go plus plus. Now, as I said, there's no way for us to see the score in the game itself, but because we made this public, we'll be able to see the score in the inspector. So let's take a look at that and make sure it's working, and then we can, we'll finish this up and then just work on the score and stuff after, or like the UI. Okay, so there it is. Make sure I've got the player selected. So on the player, if I scroll down here, I can see the score is 0. And I go, bang, and we have got points going up. Okay, so everything looks really good. The game is playing as it should. And that's all we can do at the moment. Okay, let us finish up. So I'm going to save this here. Save. And then we will look at creating a very simple UI. And then hopefully end the game.